going to say then. So I'll say it.
Probably best to hold off on
that. So are we live now, by the way, Jordan?
Yeah, no, don't worry. Jordan doesn't tell us. He just lets me sit here looking like a moron.
We just guess.
Yeah. He won't tell us when we're live. I'll just sit here with this and he's like, oh, you're live. And, oh, hey, hi. Welcome to the Stokastic.com NFL strategy show. Woo! All right, single lineup. This is, man, I am so excited for this slate. I'm so excited to lose money on this slate with reads that I feel very confident about that end up not coming to fruition. But look, from now up until, let's say, maybe 1:15 on Sunday, I'm excited and I'm going to stay that way. And I hope you guys do as well. Dave Loughran, Greg Ehrenberg, single lineup Sims show. And for anybody going, well, what happened to this show? What happened to that show? Yeah, I get it. All right. People are like, oh, bring back the matchup show. I get it. It was a fun show. And they're like, that's what people want. Well, here's the problem. People showed last year that they didn't want that, which is why we don't have it anymore. It wasn't, viewership was going down on that. You know, the DFS landscape and tools are changing. And on a show like this, we're building lineups. But as we build these lineups, we're doing the exact same analysis. I don't know why I'm explaining this to like the 3 people that said something, Greg, but this is just, you know, this is what I do. We're doing the exact same analysis on all of the players that we talk about, just in a different form. And while you may not know it, a format that's going to help you a lot more than that did. And it's not 2 hours long. Anyway, what's up, man? How you doing?
Yeah, I mean, you and I were looking at some of the numbers for shows this year compared to last year, and it's like not comparable. We got some of our strategy shows that have more than or close to double the viewership of what they had last year. So that's kind of the barometer of what people like or don't like.
Well, I think as people begin to watch it and like, all right, let me give it a shot, they go, oh, okay, this is actually more helpful, you know, because you could go through every play, but at the same time, what we're actually looking for is what type of builds work the best. And here's a little hint for you, Greg. Going to be a lot of Carolina in the best looking builds. And I think that there should be.
Yeah, I mean, well, number one, the offense looked way better with Andy Dalton last week than did with Bryce Young in previous weeks. And when you and I were building lineups last week, we liked plugging Diontae Johnson in, and he ended up being, you know, he was like somewhat owned, but he wasn't crazy popular, and he had a really big game, and he hasn't been priced up all that much, at least not on DraftKings, and he's going to be a really popular option on the slate, not just because he played well last week and because there was a quarterback change, but also because Adam Thielen's out, so that's creating extra value in the Carolina passing game. So there is Diontae Johnson as somebody who's like a pretty clear target for contest this week. But then there's also going to be other value options. We try to figure out who's going to be number 2 in terms of the targets that go to these other Panthers pass catchers, because there's a lot of cheap guys to look at.
Yeah, is it Mingo? We'll see. We'll see. I bet the over on this game at 47.5. It's at 48.5 on Pinnacle now. So it's actually climbing up. Jose Morales said it's going to be hard to stay away from Joe Burrow and the Bengals this week, but I want to. I don't think you need to, man. Like I'm not saying you need to go full out Joe Burrow stacks, but this game just looks good. Carolina can't stop anybody. Here's the interesting aspect of this game. When I've now been doing the picks for every game. So I have essentially a matchup show for betting, Greg, every Tuesday. Comes out Tuesday night over on the Odd Shopper channel. And as I'm breaking this game down, because last week I was on the over for Oakland and Carolina for similar purposes. As I'm breaking this game down, I'm going, all right, well, that's interesting. The Bengals can't stop anything. I mean, what a lifeless, horrid performance that was on Monday night. Can't stop anything on the ground and apparently through the air either, although the run defense is way worse. The Panthers can't either. You could talk about last week in Gardner Minshew, fine, but that's more an indictment on them than it is on the Panthers. We've seen that. Maybe they're a little bit better. Maybe they got the dead cat bounce on defense once Andy Dalton got thrown in there. But at the same time, neither of these defenses are good. Here's the crazy part, though. I think you'll appreciate this. What if I told you that the Panthers and the Bengals have both passed block extremely well, but neither of them can get any pressure on the quarterback on defense. Also, Andy Dalton was pressured 7 times last game. Okay, I know Max Crosby's dealing with a high ankle, but both of these teams actually can pass block, and both of these defenses can't rush the passer.
Not a good combination. And then another thing that could likely lead to is if teams are able to have a lot of success throwing the football on both sides, then you have just massive shootout potential. And there haven't really been a lot of games that I've been game stacking. I don't know if that's something you've been paying attention to when you run your lineups through the Sims. I know it's questions that people have asked me online as well, but like there haven't been very many great game stack situations this year. And this looks like probably the best one we've seen all season.
Especially given pricing. Yeah. So we'll dive into it. Happy to have you guys with us as always. Hey, if you don't mind, take a single second this wonderful Wednesday morning, atone for your sins, hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below. And guys, any of these tools that we're about to use throughout the show, that we use every week, that we use every Sunday, and on these shows, anything you want to get access to, or even just look around, that first link in the description where it says join Stokastic NFL, or that Jordan can throw in the chat right now, pulls everything up for you. There's no longer this like convoluted breakdown where it's like, click this link for this or this link for this. You click one link, it takes you straight to every package. You can toggle from weekly or monthly, and you can see all 4 of the packages. Last year, admittedly, Greg, look, we can admit to these mistakes. We made the mistake of not really giving everyone subscription possibilities as far as like, this one has this one has this. Hey, this one's amazing, but it's still less than this. And this one is great. It was kind of like you got funneled into one or you didn't have much at all. Now we have legitimately great packages that'll build you better lineups that you can build yourself or run the Sims for any level of player, no matter whether you're starting out or you've been doing this for a long time and your bankroll is up there.
Yep. And different tools for different people too. We've got the single lineup sim that Loughran and I build lineups on this show. We've got the Sims that we build lineups for on Friday, and we go over that. And then if you guys are just looking for projections, ownership projections, that kind of stuff, of course, we have that as well on the website. So try to build a wide variety of tools at different price points, and hopefully there's something for you guys, because I do think we have something for everybody now.
Yep. And you want to try the single lineup sim out, that's in the light package or the core for weekly or monthly. Make sure to join our Discord as well with you sign up. It's included in everything. Say what's up, come in, say hi. That's what we should have, by the way. That should be included on this, the landing page, the join page, Greg. Premium Discord should be included, but it's not, but it should be. I'll have a talk with some people. Anyway, let's dive into it. We'll talk single lineup sims here. The way this works, because we have the other sim that we do that show on Friday, right? And that we get really granular on that, looking at what type of builds make the most sense. 2 tight end, could be this, it could be that. It could be QB +4, QB +1, skinny stacks, not a lot of runbacks. I like to use that as a somewhat cheat sheet. So I'll run it first before I go into the lineup sim or the lineup builder, single lineup, because sometimes it gives me an idea. But with the single lineup sim, we're hand building these lineups out, and then we're getting instant feedback, instant simmed ROI, simmed against, the generated field, gives you the win percentage, the top 10 percentage, cast percentage. So we're going to do that today and dive straight into this one. And you know what? I'm going to kick it off to you since I started last week. What do we want to start building with? And by the way, if you guys have any ideas in chat, like, hey, can we try building this way or this way? If it's not too preposterous, I'm more than happy to do it.
Sure. Yeah. So, just because we already opened up talking about it, and I really do like that Panthers-Bengals game, let's start by plugging in Andy Dalton, and let's try to make a stack of this game and see what it ends up looking like, because I know that a lot of my favorite pass catchers on this slate are coming from the Panthers. Andy Dalton individually maybe isn't my favorite quarterback. I think actually, like, I slightly prefer Joe Burrow on the other side. But just for the salary savings, I think it's fun to start with Dalton.
Let's do it. Clayton said, I'm getting way more Arizona, Washington than Cincinnati, Carolina. Totally get it. I love that game. Absolutely love that game. Washington coming off a big win, traveling out west on a short week. Arizona's offense looks good here, even if McBride is out. And then Greg, another comment that I found interesting was, we had somebody mention that, they could see Cincinnati playing better this week. I could too, because you can't get any worse than last week, but it's still one of these spots where you're getting pretty cheap players here, that we need to at least see what the builds look like. So Andy Dalton is what? 5,300.
Yeah, Andy Dalton is $5,300 on DraftKings this week. Yeah.
By the way, Jordan, do large field contest for me. If you already did, that's great. I just want to make sure. All right, so let's go. Andy Dalton, Deontay Johnson has to be in there. I got a crazy stat for you if you want to hear it that I pulled up this morning.
Sure. Is it a Deontay Johnson stat, I assume?
Yes.
Hit me with it.
Last week, Andy Dalton had 5 pass attempts in the end zone, right? So 5 end zone attempts. 80% of those went to Deontay Johnson.
Makes sense. I mean, just from watching the game, not that I remember, or maybe on red zone, they didn't go to every single red zone pass attempt that Andy Dalton had. But one thing, Deontay Johnson had 14 targets last week. That's a ton. He also ended up scoring a touchdown. But on top of that, too, there was a couple of really close ones where he almost ended up scoring. I remember there was one in the back of the end zone where he just didn't get his feet down. There was one where he was open and he was overthrown a little bit. So Deontay Johnson had a massive game last week, and it could have been even bigger.
Absolutely. Now, my question to you is, are you trying to go Mingo here? You want to go Leggett? Or do we want to look at like I wanted to say maybe we go Chuba Hubbard. Here's the wild part. He had 5 targets and 5 receptions on 5 targets last week. He only ran 11 routes, which is kind of crazy. Only ran 11 routes in that game. Sanders ran 14. So both of them were used out of the backfield as running routes. Mingo 28, Xavier Leggett 20, Deontay Johnson 37. Of course, Adam Thielen got hurt. Tommy Tremble had 30 as well. I don't think he's out of the picture either.
No, especially because tight end just continues to be a train wreck so far. If we look at all the options, like I don't mind Chuba Hubbard as a combination with Dalton. Not saying that's what I want to go to in this lineup. I think Leggett as well as Mingo makes sense, as does Tremble. So overall, Deontay Johnson is the #1 overall priority. But for me, just because of the price point, I like Jonathan Mingo as my second most favorite pass catcher with Andy Dalton. I'm not exactly sure who's going to be the second wideout this week between Leggett or Jonathan Mingo, but neither of them are all that popular, at least on our first run of ownership. And Mingo is only $3,300, whereas Leggett is $4,800 on DraftKings. So the $1,500 salary savings, that's going to carry a lot of water for me, at least as of now. If we get more information that somebody's definitively going to be the #2 guy, then that would change my opinion potentially. But for right now, with that being a little bit more of an unknown, I would say Mingo at 3,300.
Okay. I'm also just going to throw this out there to you, and we can build one like this afterwards. I'm very interested in Chuba Hubbard, Deontay Johnson lineups without Andy Dalton.
Yeah, I don't have an issue with that either. I mean, we've seen Chuba Hubbard have games last year where he was very heavily involved in the passing game and was kind of game script independent. Like if they were ahead, he was going to be running the ball a lot. If they were trailing, he was going to be very involved in the passing game. And it could very well be the case that he's second in the team in targets this week with Adam Thielen out. So yeah, I don't have any issue with that at all. And there's also definitely a scenario where both of them could have good games and Dalton doesn't necessarily have to be in the winning lineup.
I think it's very possible. I really do. I mean, just given how much of a sieve this Bengals defense has been, I have, and I know you don't have a problem with this either, but I'm also perfectly fine, eschewing all of these Carolina pass catchers and going to Chuba in lineups, right? Like that, that is not concerning to me at all. The issue is that Deontay Johnson is just so cheap that if you're going with Chuba Hubbard and Deontay Johnson, and not going Dalton, that's what, 56 and 5,700? Really good price points.
Yeah, and then I mean, even now with Dalton in that lineup now, I
Yeah,
mean, we've got
right.
such a cheap stack that we're working with here. One other thing that I would add about Chuba Hubbard as well is it seems to me the goal for the Panthers after they get past this game and moving forward is that Jonathan Brooks, he's going to come back. And then I think he's going to be the workhorse back for them later on in the year. So I don't think they care if they run Chuba Hubbard into the ground right now because the goal isn't for him to be playing the bulk of the snaps at the end of the season anyway.
Agreed. Yeah, I'm with you. All right. So I guess the next question is, do we hit the run back? Because, one way to do it is you go T Higgins at 5,900 because Jamar Chase is always in play here at 77. And I think that price is really reasonable. But T Higgins played 90% of snaps in his first game of the year. He's clearly no longer limited by that hamstring. I like either of those guys as a run back if we wanted to run this back. And I think we easily can at these price points.
Yeah, I don't think we have to force a run back just because the guys we've rostered are so cheap. I'd be more inclined to go to Jamar Chase at this point because if you plug in T. Higgins, and I think T. Higgins looks like a really good contrarian option, like you mentioned, first game back. I'm also still a little skeptical how injured he was to open the year. I definitely think the contract played a role in him sitting out. Not to say he didn't have any injury, but I think that he was like, I'm 95% instead of 100%. I'm taking zero chance at risking an injury until I get that paycheck. So that's one of we very rarely see somebody miss the start of the season with a hamstring injury and play a full allotment of snaps in their first game back, which is kind of the reason that I think that's the way that it's played out there. And another reason why too, I have zero concerns about T. Higgins this week. I just think he's underpriced in this matchup, but we already have so many cheap players in this lineup that I'd be more inclined to just plug in Jamar Chase.
Let's do it. And I'm going to see what happens just quickly here. If we were to toss in Houston defense at 2,700 against Jacksonville, that gives us 6,300 per player. So leave Jacksonville, or sorry, no, I got that wrong. I had Jacksonville defense in there. How much is the Houston D?
The Houston defense
3,000
is 3,000.
It's not bad.
There's a lot of decent looking cheap defenses this week. I mean, most notably the Rams defense against the Bears. And then you've also got Houston going up against Jacksonville. From watching the Bears play a few games, and it's the reason there's going to be upside against the Bears offense. It's not because I think Caleb Williams is going to be absolutely dog shit terrible all year, but he's going to be inconsistent. He's a first year quarterback, and it has been very apparent the Bears have no issues letting him throw a shit ton. That's how you score fantasy points on defense. You just need opportunities.
Yep.
And the way that has to happen is through the passing game. If you're playing a team that's just going to run the ball 30 times and then pass the ball 15, it doesn't yield very many turnover opportunities, doesn't create very many sack opportunities. There's going to be some big defensive games against the Bears because it looks like Caleb Williams is going to have games where he throws 40, 50 times.
Absolutely. Same thing with the Steelers here, even though it's low pass volume for Richardson, he just makes so many mistakes. So Steelers aren't even that expensive. Let's throw the Rams in here. I'm with you at 2,800. That gets us a decent price point. So now we're talking now still 6,300 per player remaining. Running back. There's a lot to talk about here. I mentioned to Ben, if Vita Vea is out for Tampa, Saquon Barkley to me looks really good. And we're not going to have him projected all that well right now. But if Vita Vea sits, Kalijah Cansey's still out. They've got a bunch of injuries on defense. We saw what happened last week against Denver in Tampa. That could be ugly. But for now, I'm okay getting away from that. The expensive spots here, Breece Hall, Jonathan Taylor, I'm good there. I have too much respect for this Pittsburgh defense, as good as Taylor is. We have Alvin Kamara projected really well. I was a little bit surprised to see that number on him as the highest projected running back on the slate.
I'm not. And so there was a point last week where as the slate was playing out, I was starting to feel I regretted how much Alvin Kamara I had when you looked at what his production was relative to Jonathan Taylor or Saquon Barkley. But then the final workload that Alvin Kamara finished with last week, where he carried the ball 26 times. He also had 3 catches for 40 yards. And we've seen him even more targets than that and more work in the passing game in the past. And then we also know that there was no Taysom Hill last week. So that would have meant extra red zone opportunities. Just a low scoring game against the Eagles. 15-12 was the final score in that one. And I didn't really regret it in hindsight, just because Alvin Kamara had such insane workload. Like, I look back at it in hindsight, it's like, all right, Kamara wasn't bad last week. He didn't like win me any GPPs or anything like that. But I didn't regret that I had like 30-something% exposure to Kamara, because the workload was so high, and it's been so high all year, that I think that he is just going to have to be a guy that we consider to be a top, or at the very minimum, a top 3 projected running back by fantasy points just about every week at this point. I mean, 26 carries, 3 catches for 40 yards last week. I think Alvin Kamara is rightfully the top projected running back just based on the workload.
Yeah, very good point. 29 touches, 23 looks the game before that, 20 before that, and that was a blowout where he didn't even play late in that game. I get it. I have a lot of respect for this Atlanta defense, and I think sometimes that's where my reservations come from. Like, I actually think this is a good Falcons defense, but might not matter too much. Kamara played 86% of snaps. So if we expect this game to stay close, is that more towards what we should be expecting? Whereas their first 2 games were total blowouts. I think 75% makes the most sense to me. I don't anticipate him getting up there close to 90. But do you want to plug Kamara in here, just given that insane workload right now? By the way, I definitely like Ben and I had a big disagreement on Breece Hall yesterday. Not a big disagreement, because I love the kid, but I still, are they going to start using Braylon Allen to the point where Breece Hall is still really good and still really involved? Because he still saw 21 looks last game, but does that cap his touch upside, given that Braylon Allen is like actually proving to be good out of the gate as a rookie?
For sure. And I think another big part of it has to be as well is that the Jets are clearly being somewhat cautious with Breece Hall. Like, we saw them winning in a blowout. Breece Hall just doesn't,
and they can afford to be cautious.
Yeah, they could afford to be cautious, and especially in this matchup too. I mean, I think Denver stinks. The Jets should win this game pretty easily. But then also part of them being cautious with Breece Hall, if they're up by multiple scores, I think Braylon Allen is going to be the guy who gets the goal line touches more often than not, because why add that extra wear and tear to Breece Hall if they don't have to? So as good as Allen has looked so far this year, Breece Hall is still the number 1 guy for the Jets, but there's no way that they can get away from giving Allen touches. He's just been that good so far. Alvin Kamara doesn't have that competition right now. Jordan Mason doesn't have that competition right now. So it's not that Breece Hall is not going to have a good season or anything like that. It's just there are other running backs I could pay up for that I prefer for this week.
Agreed. And I like Breece Hall this week. I just think, if this were a similar situation, as previous seasons where there was really nobody behind them, like Dalvin Cook, right? Dalvin Cook was not even used anymore towards the latter stages of the season. Like Justin Kelly said, they're not going to pass much when they don't have to. Breece will be fine. I don't think anyone's disputing that. Also, who the hell knows what's going to happen in these games anymore? I certainly don't. But yes, I do believe Bo Nix is going to have a tough time throwing against this secondary. Tampa was very banged up last week. I believe in Bo Nix going forward. I think he's going to be perfectly fine, to use that word. But yeah, no issues with Breece Hall at all. I think the price point at 7,800 is solid. But let's throw Kamara in here and see what happens. If we were to go one more running back, like, I would be more than happy to go back to Jordan Mason this week. I'm not worried about last week at all. He still saw a lot of opportunities. The Rams and Sean McVay worked their magic. I was surprised by that, no doubt. They just jammed Kyron Williams as many times as they could and found ways to make plays. But at the same time, if you want to talk about volume, Greg, and we can go back to, a similar conversation with Kamara, you still saw 21 touches for Jordan Mason, 21 the game before that, 29 the game before that. Garendo got what, one or two? I don't remember what his actual opportunities were. He played 14% of snaps. Mason still played 75. You can chalk him up for around 80, 10-point favorite. They're still dealing with injuries at the pass catcher positions. We don't know what George Kittle's status is going to look like. I mean, all in all, I think Mason still profiles as a really good play this week.
Yeah. Also got 2 targets in the passing game last week, which I think the absence of George Kittle, the absence of Deebo Samuel, I mean, this team has just been decimated by injuries a few games in. I think week 1, the workload is probably a little bit of an aberration for Jordan Mason. I don't think we're going to regularly see him get close to 30 touches, but I think he's a pretty safe bet for 20 plus touches. I think what happened in week 1 is that Christian McCaffrey was ruled out on fairly short notice. I really thought that they thought Christian McCaffrey would be back for week 2 or week 3 at the latest. And they were just like, cool, let's just run Jordan Mason into the ground because what does it matter? We only need him for this one game. And now you're in a situation where Christian McCaffrey is going out to Germany to get a second opinion. I think at best now we have to consider Christian McCaffrey, I don't know, 75-25 to even come back for the rest of the season. I think it's a very big risk considering that he has an Achilles injury and he's going to get a second opinion on it. There's definitely a chance he doesn't end up coming back. So I think the 49ers had to somewhat ease up on the workload of Jordan Mason, but it's just the difference of him getting an Alvin Kamara type workload where Kamara's been seeing 30-ish touches. It's him getting like that Breece Hall workload where it's closer to 20.
What do you think Alvin Kamara's rushing plus receiving prop is this week?
Did you say rushing and receiving?
Rushing plus, yeah, rushing, receiving, yeah.
98.5.
What a guess. On the money, brother.
Really?
Nailed it.
All right. I was thinking about going, I was going to go 102.5. And then I was like, I don't know, triple digit seems a little high.
Nailed it. Nailed it. It's 99.5 on DraftKings, but at BetMGM, it's 98.5. Wonderfully done. What do you think Breece Hall's is? I'm not letting you off the hook now.
So Breece Hall has to be lower. It's a good matchup against Denver, though. I'll say 88.5.
97.5.
Ooh, that seems high to me.
Okay. Jonathan Taylor is 87.5. Saquon doesn't have one yet. What do you, this is all, it all culminates into this.
Yeah.
Barkley, what do you think Jordan Jordan Mason's is?
Oh, okay. Jordan Mason's now. All right. So Jordan Mason.
Are you looking it up?
Is against New England. It's going to be, some passing game work, but mostly run game work. 92.5.
Close. 99.5. So what I'm getting at here is this guy, if you're just looking at Vegas and, you'd be wise to use Vegas as a kind of baseline for a lot of this. Right now, he has the same or higher rushing plus receiving as Kamara, as Breece Hall, higher than Jonathan Taylor, and he's $1,000 or more cheaper than all of those guys.
He's hard to stay away from. And, so last week I did poorly on DraftKings, did really well on FanDuel. And a lot of it was just because of Jordan Mason. Like I thought his price point was really difficult to get away from on DraftKings. He was in the majority of my lineups. And then on FanDuel, where he was in the mid 8K range, it was easier to get away from him. So I didn't have as much exposure to him on FanDuel, so did well there. And then DraftKings was too exposed to him, didn't come out as well. But I mean, even though he had the subpar game last week, I still feel very inclined to go back to him. $6,700 against New England. It's such a good matchup. And I do think it sets up really well for them to run the ball. I'm sure a lot of people are going to want to click on Juwan Jennings after just the most outlier of all outlier games last week. Like Juwan Jennings, I feel like he doubled his career numbers in that performance that he had last week. But I'd much rather get exposure to the 49ers through Jordan Mason than any other player on the team.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you one more, okay?
Mm-hmm.
This is a fun one. And you guys in chat guess as well. By the way, if you're not using the live odds screen, I mean, I would love for Jordan to pull that up right now on Odd Shopper because it's 100% free. I use this every single day religiously, dude, to find plays, to throw in over tails into the premium Discord. By the way, if you want to join me, NFL 24 promo code, 50% off your first week. less than $5 or 15% off or 50% off your first month, less than $15 a week. We've been hitting bangers this season. It's free. It's under the Portfolio EV live odds screen. It's totally free. And you can search everything on here. I'm telling you, it's awesome. If you're a bettor, use this. What do you think Bijan's at?
Ooh, okay. So Bijan, I mean, just based on those other guys that we've talked about and thinking they should all be somewhere around the same, I'd say like 95.5 for him.
This is surprising to me, and that's where I would have put it too. 107.5.
That seems crazy to me.
Right?
That's such a high number because the Saints have, number one, the Saints have been good this year. But then also Bijan Robinson, while he's playing big workloads, he kind of has the Breece Hall situation where Tyler Algier also is going to be getting touches. And like, this is not to say that Bijan Robinson is somebody who I would like want to be avoiding or anything like that. Like, actually, I think he's great to have in lineups with Alvin Kamara as well. There's a little bit of correlation there. Both of them are involved in the run game, involved in the pass game. I just don't think Bijan Robinson should have a prop that's like 10 yards higher than every other running back on the slate.
Me neither. I'm surprised, man. Now there's nothing on Pinnacle. It's at DraftKings and on BetMGM, but that might be an under spot that I get to before it moves. I was just kind of surprised by that. Not the greatest spot. All right. So we got, I like this. Alvin Kamara will go back to the well with Mason. 99.5 rushing plus receiving is a big number, Greg. So we have 3 receivers in there. We need tight end and a flex. It's 5,500 per.
Just out of curiosity, Jordan, just plug a Bijan Robinson into the utility spot because then I'll see what tight end comes up as the best projected. What do we have left for 3,600?
Okay, which is that's workable.
Yeah, you know what? We could plug in Mike Gesicki, and then we've got a double game stack.
Full out game stack. Do not hate that.
Just kind of fit together well.
Yeah. So my preference here, and the projections would not be with this, so we'll go with yours. My preference would be Marvin Harrison there. In the flex, but
over Bijan.
Yeah, we don't have. I'm a sucker when it comes to that Commanders team. I think that defense is so bad that you can run anybody out there against them. And a guy Marvin Harrison, he's second in end zone targets this season too, and the guy didn't even get targets in week 1. So I really do like him this week, but it appears that right now with our first run of projections, we don't have him all that high. Bijan's clearly going to look better in a spot like this.
Here's a reason why why I think it just kind of has to be that way, just based on the same logic that we use talking about some of these other players. What is the prop for Marvin Harrison's yards this week?
If I had to guess, I'd say 68.5.
Which would have Bijan like nearly double.
Right. I'm also guessing. Would have him nearly double, but it is a full PPR site, so not
true.
Let's see. Marvin Harrison. It looks like there isn't one on him yet, likely because Trey McBride is questionable.
True. I mean, it's the same too. Like you had brought up the situation before with Barkley not having props. Also really hard to put those up considering that you don't know what's going to happen. Is Devonta Smith going to end up playing? AJ Brown, I presume he's going to be out, but you never know. I think they're just going to wait for more definitive updates to post any of those props.
I would think that, Saquon Barkley's prop, regardless, is going to be really high for rushing plus receiving this week.
Agreed.
Yeah. And then if those injuries happen to Tampa, maybe it doesn't move the needle a ton in the prop market, but I would definitely be looking to get some action there if it's where we want it. If Vita Vea and company are out, but yeah, we don't have anything on Harrison yet. That doesn't shock me. I'll tell you what though, Greg, Marvin Harrison to me in this spot, I mean, this Commanders D is just so bad.
It's been bad. And also something that has contributed to some of the games being high scoring. I mean, Jaden Daniels in the offense has looked incredible, especially the other day on the double Monday Night Football slate. So when you have an offense that's just easily able to move the ball down the field and score points in a hurry, you're just getting this shitty defense on the field quicker as well. Like, I think it almost would benefit the defense if the offense was less good. They wouldn't have to be on the field constantly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, that's why we had that incredibly high scoring game between Washington and Cincinnati. And it is totally realistic to think that Washington, Arizona is going to be equally high scoring this week. So I think that's another really good game to be targeting.
Also, for what it's worth, we have Trey McBride and Marvin Harrison projected pretty much identical right now. I just see it differently than that. Like, and again, this stuff will change, and we'll see if McBride plays. He took a heck of a shot, but to the point I was making earlier, Greg, I know it's only been a few games, but this still does matter to me in some capacity. Marvin Harrison's second in the league in end zone targets this year with 5. That means a lot to me, especially considering he probably didn't have any in week 1, right? Since he was targeted like twice. Maybe he did, but either way, 5 in 2 games is a ton. The only one with more is Deontay Johnson with 6. He has 8 red zone targets on the season. That's good for 4th best in the league. Whereas McBride has 3 targets inside the red zone, none in the end zone. And over the last 2 weeks, once you've seen this emergence of Marvin Harrison, 35% target share to McBride's 20, 53% of air yards to McBride's 16. I think there is going to be, and I'm a big McBride guy. I loved him last year. I still like him this year. I think he's a good player. But I think there should be a bigger gap in salary there, and I think there should be a bigger gap in expected production.
Yeah, totally fair. I mean, there's a couple of, once again, assuming Trey McBride plays, I think there's a couple of key decision points on this slate about which players you want to be prioritizing from which team. Arizona, Washington, I think that could be a really high scoring game. So McBride versus Harrison, that's one that's certainly going to come to mind. We talked about the Panthers situation and who's going to be the cheap guy you want to roster from the Panthers. Another one as well is assuming George Kittle and Deebo Samuel both don't play. Brandon Ayuk and Juwan Jennings are almost the same price on DraftKings this week.
I know. Yeah, that's going to be, where do we have ownership at on both of them?
Let's see. Jennings is 6% projected owned, Ayuk 18%. I know that. Okay, so for me, just like my initial thought is I'm going to want to prefer Brandon Ayuk. And I'm pretty confident that when I'm doing content over the course of the week, when we're doing our sim show on Friday, Lofty, when I'm doing my lineup building segment on Sunday, that a lot of people are going to be like, I want to play Jennings over Brandon Ayuk. I think that's going to be something a lot of people say. So I wouldn't be surprised that ownership ends up being a little bit tighter than what it's actually projected to become Sunday. And once again, this is assuming that Deebo Samuel and George Kittle both remain out. But I have to prioritize Brandon Ayuk at $6,400, and his ownership is half of what it was projected to be last week because people are not out on Brandon Ayuk, but he was so popular last week. He didn't come through. Juwan Jennings did, and I do think people are going to be less inclined to play Ayuk due to that.
I agree. And we'll see what's going on with George Kittle as well. But yes, Juwan Jennings had, man, that hair is just really something else. If you go to his DraftKings player page, that is
pulling it up.
That is quite the head of hair.
Checking it out.
He looks like Gritty, the Eagles or the Flyers mascot. Look at that. I mean, that certainly is a decision.
Oh, so you know what? I saw this at first. I thought it was, you ever edit a picture on your iPhone and you accidentally swipe across something and just a line shows up? At first I looked at it, I was like, oh, it just looks like it's poorly edited. Somebody accidentally swiped orange across the top of his head. But
oh no, that is hair.
He went to the barber and that's what he asked for.
Yeah. But okay, so, and by the way, people in chat saying McBride has a concussion. I know I said that a bunch. But we don't, do I think he plays? No. You know, we saw last year a real trend towards guys who are concussed not playing the following week, Greg. Whereas in previous years, it was kind of just like, oh, it's a Thursday game after playing on Sunday. Get them out there. They're fine. That's been, a lot less prevalent this season. So I don't think McBride plays. Elijah Higgins would be very viable. We're not going to build lineups for that right now, though, because the projections still have McBride in. And throughout the week, like if he's not practicing, we're just going to have him out. If Devonta Smith isn't practicing, we're just going to have him out. But Barkley, if he really does once again come in at like 6, 7, 8% ownership, and so many of these other running backs are popular, like, we have Bijan at 20%. We have Kamara at 20%. I'm looking at the ownership in the single lineup sims, which vary a little bit. We have Mason at 43%, rightfully so. But if Barkley really does come in that low on with the workload that he's been getting, there is no more committee in Philadelphia. This shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. Kenneth Gainwell's not getting touches. Guy stinks. Barkley's played 80+% of snaps in 3 games. All 3 games. He's involved everywhere. The offensive line, even without Lane Johnson and Becton last week, they didn't skip a beat because Jeff Stoutland's amazing on the O-line. I would go, if Barkley's really single digits, that is a spot that I'm willing to target once again.
And then also related to this, we currently have Devonta Smith in our projections. He's another one who was concussed last week. I don't think he's all that likely to play on Sunday either.
Who is that? I'm sorry.
Devonta Smith.
Yeah, that's what I said, though. I'm saying Devonta and McBride. Yeah. So we'll see. The biggest thing for me is if Vita Vea plays or not for Tampa.
Yeah. I mean, if he's out for Tampa, they're going to have weaker run stopping for sure. He's one of the best run stoppers in the league. But then on top of it, if you have a scenario where the Eagles don't have AJ Brown or Devonta Smith potentially to pass to, it just sets up so well for them to run the ball more.
Exactly. We had a question. Is Bucks D-line good? Yeah, if Vea's in there, he's arguably the best run stopper. He's a top 5 run stopper in football for sure. But if he's not in there, that is a massive hole in that defense. That's like a 330-pound hole in the defense. All right, hey, let's build one. I really want to build one with Kyler. The problem I'm running into here is the McBride thing, right? So let's save that for the Sim show on Friday, because I think by then we're not going to have McBride in. Let's try one with CJ Stroud against this Jags team that was as lifeless as a team could possibly be on Monday night under the bright lights.
And rolled over. It wasn't just they
totally
didn't show up.
Up.
It was they pretty clear. They went down. I was thinking about it while I was watching the game too, I was like, all right, if they just get rolled in this game and they lose by like 40 or 30 or something like that, I'm kind of out on the Jaguars for the rest of the season. But if they would have lost, but at least made it competitive at the end, I would have said, all right, this team is a little bit of fight to them. They look like dog shit the other day. And this seems like a complete lost season for them potentially at this point. And then one also where I don't know what the hell's going on with Trevor Lawrence, but he's gone from being a generational prospect and also somebody who is like a really good looking young quarterback, struggled a little bit in his first year, but made big improvements. He's regressed massively.
He's been a bottom 7 quarterback in the league so far.
Yeah, and if he isn't, the only reason that he isn't because of him. It's because there's just so many remarkably, terribly shitty quarterbacks in the league right now.
Exactly. And it's not like he doesn't have weapons. I know you lost Calvin Ridley, but Brian Thomas Jr. is good. Like, clearly we're seeing that guy can play. Christian Kirk, I'm not saying he's got a murderer's row of pass catchers, but it's not like he has nobody. It's not, you're not out there with the Giants pass catchers of last year, Carolinas of last year. You have weapons. It's bad. I would honestly consider starting Mac Jones and see what Mac can do. I think after this week, and by the way, Doug Peterson was cryptic when they asked him about Lawrence starting this week. So stay tuned for that. I wouldn't be surprised if it was Mac Jones if Lawrence is I was talking about this game. They were 6-point dogs yesterday. And I said, when I was doing the video on OddsShopper, I was like, normally I would say, man, a team coming off a brutal loss and now it's a divisional spot. How do I not want to get to the Jags here? But I couldn't do it, Greg, because one, they look like they've given up. They look like that Doug's totally lost this team, but also Houston's coming off an embarrassing loss as well. So that angle doesn't play as well, right? Houston's coming off. Brian Flores put them in a blender defensively. And now you're going back home. I think it's a Houston team that could light them up this week.
Yeah, and I'm not very concerned long term with Houston this year. I am with Jacksonville. Like Houston, I just kind of chalk that off as an off game for them. And they've got so many weapons on offense. CJ Stroud, for the most part, has been terrific since day one as a starting quarterback for Houston. So I think he bounces back just fine. Not that much ownership projected to go to him either. 5%. So yeah, I think this is a reasonable contrarian quarterback and contrarian team to be stacking.
Envious said, who watched that game with the way the Commanders were slinging? I did, because I had over props on the Jags, which somehow hit because they left their starters in outside of Lawrence till the end of the game.
Which was also really weird. If there's one thing that I do, here's in a weird way, probably the best thing that could come out about the Jaguars right now is if Trevor Lawrence has been dealing with an injury all year. Because in that case, you'd be like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But I'd rather him be hurt right now than it just be like, oh no, he actually is just terrible.
I agree, but there's been nothing to even suggest that he has an injury. Nothing.
No, totally agree. Nothing at all. But it is, at the very least, it's weird that they took him out but left all the rest of the starters in to close last week.
I agree. It's almost like his punishment was getting benched. The other punishment for the other starters was just staying in there. It was like equal punishment. That one interception at the hash marks, probably 20 yards downfield, that was overthrown by 5 feet right into the arms of DeMar Hamlin. It's one of the worst throws you're going to see. The only reason it's not being talked about as much is because Anthony Richardson possibly had the worst interception you'll ever see.
Yeah, he was rolling out to his left. He had, I don't think there was somebody open in the end zone. I think
Ashton Dolan slipped, I think, but still.
But there was like 3 defenders in the area and he threw it. I mean, the only way it would have been a reasonable pass is if he was literally trying to throw it to the cornerback who picked it off. But yeah, it was one of the, especially the situation because they were on like the 3-yard line or something like that. But yeah, that was an all-time bad interception.
Einsteinium said he hasn't been much better than Daniel Jones, Laffy. No, I'd go as far to say that Daniel Jones has been objectively better than Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah. So if we're just talking about this year, yeah.
Yeah. Listen, Daniel Jones, even in week 2, gave them every shot to win that game. They didn't have a field goal kicker. Graham Gano got hurt. They would have won that game. Like this isn't like Monday morning quarterbacking. They actually would have won that game, So who knows? Either way, let's build one with Stroud.
Yeah. So Stroud, I think the hardest part of Stroud is just trying to figure out what you want to do with stacking because he's got so many good options to go to. I'm still not really sold on what happens with Tank Dell going forward. He was so good last year, but he might just be hard to get production out of on a regular basis because Stephon Diggs looks like he's going to be the number 2 wide receiver this year, with Nico Collins being the guy who's just clearly number 1 for them right now. So I feel best about pairing Stroud with Nico Collins personally.
Stroud with Collins. Yeah, of course. Definitely.
Even though he's more expensive, I don't know exactly what to make of the Diggs and Dell combination. And then also with Dalton Schultz being there at tight end.
I'll be honest with you. I like Dell more than you do this week.
Yeah, I mean, he's certainly somebody who is viable for cheap, but there's other cheap wide receivers I like so much more than him. Whereas Nico Collins is just comparable to me to these other guys in the 7K range, like Rashee Rice, Devonta Smith, Garrett Wilson, whoever else is priced right around there. Like, I think that Nico Collins is comparable to all those guys. Whereas if I look at the price point on Tank Dell at $5,400, $5,400, I'd rather play Deontay Johnson around that price range. I'd rather play Terry McLaurin around that price range. So there are other guys I prefer. There's nobody I really prefer to Nico Collins, just guys who are comparable.
But what I'm saying is the reason I like Dell in a stack is because he's a lot cheaper than Diggs.
Yeah, that's fair. I think I'll end up with more exposure to Dell than Diggs, but like I don't want to have a ton of exposure to Dell, just not knowing what his workload is like on a week-to-week basis.
I only really want Dell if he's in CJ stacks, is the way I'm looking at this.
That's reasonable.
Let's try one with them and just see, because this could be a tough lineup to build given some pricing restrictions. Let's just try Stroud with Collins and Dell, and then toss back in, who do we have? Rams defense. Let's just throw them back in there.
Sure.
This is one of those spots where I don't feel like we have to get a run back. If you want to go Kirk or Thomas, fine. I don't have an issue with it, but I don't think we need to force a run back here.
I actually like Brandon Strange, especially
Brenton
because
Strange.
the tight end position is not great. So if you get a scenario where McBride doesn't play, it's tough to trust Travis Kelce at this point too. He's just been so uninvolved. So I guess by default, Brock Bowers maybe becomes my favorite spend up option, but I don't really want to pay 5,600 for him. Goddard would look good in the case that Devontae Smith sits again. But if we're looking on the cheap end, I mean, assuming that Evan Ingram sits again, Brandon Strange was pretty involved last week. He's also getting red zone targets. So Brandon Strange coming off a game where he was targeted 5 times. I know he only finished with 2 catches for 12 yards, one of them being a touchdown, but 5 targets for a tight end who's close to min price and also fits into a game stack. That's pretty sensible to me.
I'm fine with that. I'm
I
okay
just
with
love the tight ends.
Yeah, it's a bad position. We can try that. I'm not entirely opposed. I hate my one run back being a like dirt cheap guy that doesn't have a considerable target share usually. But in this case, I think you could do a whole lot worse than that. Also, just looking at the wide receiver position, I'm perfect. Like when you're talking about guys that you like over Dell, like I'm just totally fine throwing Deontay Johnson into any lineup I have at this point.
For sure.
You know, so let's toss him in. That gives us 6,300. We still have room. And quite frankly, if you wanted to say, all right, well, I want to go with another cheap wide receiver and go with like Terry McLaurin or one of these guys in the 5K range, I'm good with that too. I like George Pickens a lot this week. He's another guy that I like. So many of these players. T. Higgins down there looks good. That is a really, really, really nice range of players at the wide receiver spot.
Yep. And then also, are you assuming that Joe Mixon will not end up playing this week?
I don't know. I want to see what I'm not making any definitive statement on that yet. I believe we have him out right now, but I want to see what practice looks like. It's Wednesday. So if he gets a limited practice in today, then I think there's a chance that we could get him back. But you know, the other issue with this is that we don't know if Dameon Pierce could be back too. For Cam Akers to be viable, and I'm not saying we play him in this lineup, obviously, but for Cam Akers to be viable, you need both of those guys to be out.
Yeah, and then even last week, a lot of it did have to do with the score. And Cam Akers, particularly on FanDuel, was good last week just because he scored a touchdown. He was the flat min at 4K. But it wasn't like an insane workload for Cam Akers. Gumbawale also ended up seeing the field a decent amount. Who knows what would have ended up happening if the game was competitive. But there's enough there where, just to back up what you said, the only way you could consider playing Cam Akers if Mixon and Pierce are both out. Where this would get interesting is like if Mixon's out and Pierce returns, then it's like, what is the workload going to look like as a split? But either way, I wouldn't be considering Cam Akers for this lineup. And now I think we probably want to be looking at 2 reasonably priced running backs. I don't think we want to be going all the way up to like Alvin Kamara here. That could pinch us a little bit for the salary in the rest of the spots. So I'd be looking more at like the Jordan Mason, Chuba Hubbard range.
Yeah, agreed. Also, Agumbawale, over the last 2 seasons, or last season with Houston in 6 games, had 8 rushing attempts, 42 through 11 games in 2022, 2 this season, none last week. So to your point about just the way that game flipped, I think if you were to have Pierce out and you were to have Mixon out, the Cam Akers is, you know, the definitive number 1 on first and second down.
Yeah.
All right.
So passing situations, I think Ugumbawale could steal some of the Cam Akers targets, but either way, Cam Akers, we need a little bit more information on the Houston run game to know what to do there.
I'm going to go back to Mason here.
Mason and Hubbard, plug both of them in.
Oh, yeah, Chuba. Good call. Good call. All right. 65 for the flex.
All right, 65. Who are the guys that are priced that project well around there?
James Conner doesn't look bad in that matchup.
True, and we don't have anybody else from that game there. James
Ayuk,
Conner.
I'm
Yeah,
fine, by the
I
way,
think
with
he's the guy. The other potential option would be Brandon Ayuk, but we do have
that's, yeah.
Mason in the lineup. But yeah, I think Ayuk or Connor are the two best options here.
For what it's worth, I don't even have a problem with Ayuk and Mason, but what I do think is going to what's going to end up happening is that Marvin Harrison and a lot of these pass catchers get really popular once McBride is out. And I think James Conner might actually be the guy who doesn't get as much love. So
Could be for sure. I mean, we've got Connor. Even now, we do have Connor projected for sub 10% ownership.
How does this one look? 108.5. Nice.
Solid. Yeah. Very, very solid for sure.
Should we do a FanDuel lineup before we go?
Yeah, we'll do a FanDuel lineup before we hit the road.
And guys, as always, again, you want to check these tools out. That one single link will take you to all of this. I think, Greg, for anybody that really wanted to utilize the single lineup sim, doesn't play a ton of lineups, but wants to make the best lineups possible and really improve their game, the light version or the core. I think the core is the best because you still have access to the actual sim and all of that. Late swap, post contest sim, all of that stuff. I think the little bit extras for most people is going to be worth it big time in the long run.
Yeah, I think for our audience, it's going to apply not for everybody, but for the majority of people, core is going to be the best option. If you're somebody who plays 150 lineups, then the max package would make more sense. If you're somebody who just plays like 1 or 2 or 3 lineups each week, then I'd say the light package makes the most sense. But if you're somebody who's regularly playing like 10 to 20 lineups, I think the core is your best option.
What's up, Josh of Los Angeles? He said Concrete Connor had such a bad week. He cooked me this week. Yeah, the thing is though, that matchup from the jump was not good. That is a really, really stout run defense for Detroit. Not the case with Washington. Their run D is better than their pass D for sure. But it's a night and day type situation here, in my opinion, at least. He still played 75% of snaps last week. That's the most he's played all year. So you can, take solace in knowing that he was out there mostly the whole game. DeMarcado played only 12 snaps and Benson played 2. It just got away from him. Disappointing game for sure, though. All right, let's do FanDuel before we get out of here. I have not looked at
done it yet.
I haven't looked at FanDuel yet.
I do a Arizona Washington stack.
Arizona's tough though because we have McBride in, and I don't think he plays.
Fair. Well, we could do the Washington side though.
Okay, cool. Let's try it. How expensive is Harrison on FanDuel?
Yeah, Marvin Harrison is 8,200 on FanDuel, so he's pretty expensive.
Damn, because he's my favorite run back in a spot like this, hands down.
He's the 4th most expensive wide receiver on FanDuel. Jefferson's 9,400, Chase is 9,200, Rice is 8,500, and he got Harrison there at 8,200.
He probably should be as well.
Yeah, pricey. I don't think we need a run back though.
We don't necessarily need to. Are there any other stacks that look good on this slate? Oh, wait a second. Buffalo, Baltimore is on the slate as well.
Yep. Yeah. We got the, so the one issue I have with game stacks there is I'm almost most inclined to play Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson naked in lineups. And
I hear that. Yeah.
Can't obviously play them together. Like, I don't know what to make of the pass catchers for either of those spots. Like the Keon Coleman thing from last week, whatever, it was a team suspension, but it then also screws up like how you would look at some of the snap counts for all the wide receivers. But even so, going forward, I don't know who the number one guy is for Buffalo. And then on the Baltimore side, like, okay, we feel good about Zay Flowers being the number one wide receiver there. He's clearly the guy I'd want to be targeting with Lamar Jackson. I don't know what to make of the tight ends because people aren't complaining online about Isaiah Likely because he had the big week 1. But as bad as Mark Andrews has been the last couple of weeks, Isaiah Likely has been even worse. He is I'm fairly sure he has less receptions and less yards since week 1 than Andrews does.
Yeah, it's not been good. It's tough. Yeah, the Josh Allen running him naked makes sense. For me, though, it would be Khalil Shakir. Like, I think Khalil Shakir is probably the guy. And the one problem I keep running into is I look at this Baltimore team. How crazy is this, man? They've allowed 16 pass attempts for 20 plus yards through 3 games. How the Baltimore Ravens secondary has allowed 16 pass attempts of 20 or pass completions. Sorry, not attempts, completions of 20 plus yards. That's more than 5 per game. And, they haven't given up a ton of passing touchdowns, only 4, but the next closest team has allowed 12 completions of 20 plus yards. Maybe they figured things out. Maybe this is the Mike McDonald effect, but it is really crazy how much this secondary has struggled to limit those big plays downfield.
It is not the Ray Lewis and Ed Reed defense from our
childhood,
because that they were for so many years like one of the constants, especially if you guys played in yearly leagues, is like, oh, the Ravens are going to have one of the best defenses in real life. They're going to have one of the best defenses in fantasy. And yeah, now it's just a terrible, terrible defense. So yeah, there's definitely reasons to want to be looking at the Buffalo offense on the other side on FanDuel, where you got the Sunday night football game on the main slate. I think my overall favorite stack target with Josh Allen is probably Dalton Kincaid, but even then, like, I don't feel confident in any of the pass catchers.
And I assume one of your reasons for this is just because tight end is so bad.
Tight end bad, and then also Kincaid. I think last week was a good buy low spot for him because people seemed off of Kincaid, and then he was actually kind of decent last week. But still, he's $6,100 over on FanDuel. That's a relatively cheap price tag, considering he's somebody who, he was considered, at least by some people, a potential tight end number 1 for this year. And now, I mean, all the tight ends, he hasn't been great, but the tight ends drafted ahead of him in best ball and yearly drafts, like Travis Kelce, Sam Laporta, they haven't been any good either. But yeah, like $6,100 for Dalton Kincaid. If we do decide right now that's the game we want to stack, that's my favorite pass catching option with Josh Allen. But not that I think you make a case for the upside for a lot of these guys. I'm just not confident in any of them.
What about Lamar and Flowers?
Considering Flowers is $6,700 on FanDuel, that's the one that makes the most sense to me from a pricing standpoint.
I don't mind it. One of the other things to consider is last week, Lamar Jackson did not need to throw. That Cowboys run defense is a sieve, right? I mean, when I say they didn't need to throw, I mean, they did not need to throw at all. Well, hold on. How many passing attempts did he have last week?
I think they had 15 dropbacks.
Right?
Maybe it was 16.
I think he completed like 8 passes. No, he completed 12 on 15 attempts. And he was super efficient. That's not going to be the case this week.
You wouldn't think so. And also running the football, they ended up running the ball 45 times. So 45 rush attempts to 15 pass attempts last week.
Yeah. Let's just humor me here, Greg. Let's just try. Why not? We're on FanDuel. We have the Sunday game. Let's try one with Lamar and Flowers.
Let's do it. Plug it in, Jordan. Lamar Jackson at quarterback, and then go with Flowers at wide receiver.
For what it's worth, Flowers does have a 29% target share this year.
Yeah. I mean, last week, he did have 4 targets out of the 15 pass attempts Lamar Jackson had.
Right. The toughest part is, do we run it back? Because I'm really not, I don't think James Cook is the best run back option, but at the same time, he's been very involved in the passing game too.
Yeah, for me, I'd say no. If you want to go Kincaid at tight end, just because there's nobody I'm going to love it.
Let's do it. Let's do it. I like that.
Go Dalton Kincaid at tight end, Jordan.
And by the way, I'm not at all convinced that this lineup looks good when we sim it, but I want to try it anyway. Because this gives us a good idea of whether or not this game is worth stacking at this point, because it's actually a tough game to stack.
I think just because Flowers is so cheap, I think it'll end up looking good.
Okay. We just don't have him projected all that well. Deontay Johnson's 6,200. Chuba Hubbard is 6,500. Let's go with one of those guys. Who do you want?
Let's go Hubbard at 6,500. There's also a running back I like specific to FanDuel who is not popular. That is not really consideration for me on DraftKings right now. DeAndre Swift is $5,700 on FanDuel.
I will not and cannot do
it. It's
Dude,
such a cheap price point, 5,700.
It is so cheap, but I don't know how it's possible that this guy is dude, just listen to this for a second. Week 1, 10 rushing attempts, 30 yards. Week 2, 14 rushing attempts, 18 yards. Week 3, 13 rushing attempts, 20 yards. I mean, it's bad. And if you look up like yards before, not yards after contact, look up yards before contact and see what it looks like for DeAndre Swift this year. So yards before contact per attempt among all of these other running backs, 0.9 yards before contact per attempt. The only guys below him are Javonte Williams and Rachaad White. Now, look, I'm not saying that this isn't the game where he could get it done. Like Barkley's at 4.3, Taylor's at 4, Aaron Jones at 4, Chuba Hubbard is at 3.8, Henry at 3.5. So just to give you an idea of how big of a gap that is, this guy's basically getting hit at or behind the line of scrimmage every time he touches the ball. It scares the hell out of me, man.
Here's the other side of that, though. He's $5,700. He's not getting really any ownership on FanDuel right now, and the workload is still there, and it's coming both through the ground as well as through the air. He had 4 targets last week. He had 5 targets the week before, 13 and 14 rushing attempts. So you have a guy who's getting close to 20 touches. He's not doing shit with it so far. But if you're going to have a cheap running back who has shown to have talent, at least in the past, I don't know. I'm kind of looking to overlook the actual results of the first 3 games and just focus more on the volume has been there. And he's really, really cheap.
I will try this with you because we are friends, but I am scared of DeAndre Swift. Let's try it. Not going to be a chalky lineup. I'll tell you that much.
No, this is not chalky at all.
I'm throwing a cheap defense in. I'm throwing, well, cheap enough. We'll say relatively cheap defense. Give me, I guess there's nobody super cheap. Oh, wow. They actually were pretty good with defensive pricing here. I'll go Texans at 4,100. So now we have 7,300 for 2 receivers and a flex, Greg.
Okay. 7,300. All right. So now we're at the point where we just have like the FanDuel infinite money shit to play with.
Yes, exactly. If we want to go Jamar, I think that's perfectly reasonable. Terry is down there. I'm surprised we only have Rome projected for 8.6. I actually like Rome Odunze quite a bit here. Deontay Johnson, but we do have Chuba in there. George Pickens.
We go Rashee Rice at 8,500.
Yeah, perfectly fine with Rice.
I know at first glance, a lot of people might have sticker shock being like, oh my God, $8,500 for Rashee Rice. I mean, based on how he's played so far this year, the lack of involvement of Travis Kelce, he's just so overwhelmingly the go-to guy for Patrick Mahomes right now that I think the $8,500 price tag is totally fine. He's about as good as any fantasy wideout right now.
Oh, it is unquestionably. So I'll put it to you like this. For the guys who have played 3 games thus far, right? There's one player with a higher team target share than Rashee Rice. Can you guess who it is?
Has to be Neighbors.
Malik Neighbors. Yep. That's it. The only guy with a higher target share than Rashee Rice is Malik Neighbors on the season. It was Cooper Kupp earlier, but Puka went down and Kupp got hurt. And it was AJ Brown in week 1, but that doesn't count. It has been Rashee Rice. So I'm with you. He absolutely that price point's 100% warranted. Jamar Chase doesn't work here. We got to get a little bit cheaper.
How about Ayuk?
Ayuk's perfectly fine to me too. Yeah.
We haven't done an Ayuk lineup yet. He's $7,600 on FanDuel.
Wait a second. Let me call an audible there. Let me go Nico Collins.
Okay.
He's only $100 more.
Yeah, Collins is 7,700.
Yeah. This gives us 5,800. Is there anybody down here?
5,800. Deontay Johnson 62. So we could save some money by going cheaper at defense.
Let's try it. Try to see if there's any decent defense. Like, I mean, we don't have any Bengals. I would even consider punting with Bengals all the way at the, or I'm sorry, Panthers all the way at the bottom.
Let's see. What are the prices? Panthers 3K.
Broncos, no. Buccaneers against the terribly banged up Eagles team might be viable.
The Raiders are 3,700 against the Browns. I think I'd play any defense.
Oh yeah, let's do that. That's that's a good one. Max Crosby with that injury sucks, but who cares? Who cares? Like you said, play anybody against them. Should we just go Deontay Johnson? This gives us the lineup I was looking for with Chuba and Deontay Johnson.
Cool.
Sweet. And then, of course, if you guys are playing something like this, make sure Flowers is in that flex spot and then Deontay Johnson is in the wide receiver spot. So you're not, talking any spot, any site that has late swap is what I'm saying. All right, 38.6. That's manageable.
Not the highest, but it's positive ROI at least.
Yeah, I think it's just I'm not convinced that did you run a, let's do this before we go. This will be fun because I think I know where this could be. Did you run a FanDuel sim?
Yes. So part of the issue though with FanDuel sims right now is that Cam Akers projects extremely well and he's still super cheap on FanDuel.
That perfectly fine. But what I wanted to see is how much exposure we have to this night game. I'm wondering if this has something to do, like, what exposure do we have to the night game? It just feels like a really tough one to get to.
So I got to a lot of both Lamar Jackson and Zay Flowers, nearly 20% of both of them.
Okay.
But didn't really get exposure to anybody else in that game.
Gotcha. I was thinking, what about like the naked Josh Allen with a Zay Flowers run back? Like even that to me is interesting.
Yeah, of the top 150 lineups, none of them had Josh Allen.
Really?
Yeah, no Josh Allen. He's expensive.
He is. If I were to do it, I might do it that way. I might not have any pass catches with Allen and run it back with a Zay Flowers or something.
Yeah, hey, so Lamar is 8,900 and the price point on 9,200, even 89 is a lot to spend at quarterback, but like 92 is such a steep salary.
Definitely. It's a lot. The good fella, agree with the Worthy take, and I feel like Kelsey blow up spot. Our game is coming soon as well. There must have been some conversation about Worthy. Yeah, hey, maybe Kelsey blows up soon. Maybe. The problem I'm having is that like this is kind of a hope and a prayer at this point, Greg. Because I don't really have much to go off of as far as Kelsey being like productive and involved in this offense right now. Could it just change out of nowhere? Sure, it could. He's arguably the best tight end to ever play the game. I still go Gronk, but he's still arguably the best to ever play the game. Could he just reemerge? It's possible. We just haven't seen any of it yet.
Yeah, I mean the other I guess pushback, if I had to have a counter, I feel that way about every single like pricey tight end right now. Like I don't know how you feel great about Laporta. I don't know how you feel great about McBride. I mean, Mark Andrews is cheap on FanDuel now. He's not even an expensive tight end, but the guys that you have to pay up for a tight end, it's Travis Kelce, Trey McBride, Brock Bowers is expensive now on FanDuel, and maybe he ends up being the guy. I think ultimately he will be, but the quarterback situation is in total disarray in Las Vegas. And then we've only seen him play 3 games. So it's hard to say that like you'd prefer Brock Bowers to Travis Kelce. So I have uncertainty with every single expensive tight end.
Me too. Appreciate you guys as always, Sim Strategy Show on Friday as well. That is going to be fun. You should stick around for that. And remember, before you go, if you're not rocking the Stokastic avatar, do yourself a serious solid. Go to stokastic.com/HOF. That's it. Download one of those 6 beautiful avatars you see on the screen. Use it wherever it is you play. FanDuel, DraftKings, Yahoo, Owner's Box, doesn't matter. If you finish top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more, see, listen to how sweet this is. Finish top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more. It doesn't matter if the entry fee is 100, 500, or 5 cents, as long as it's top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more and it isn't more than a 3-way split. You're getting a free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum, or sorry, Stokastic Sims NFL, $200 value, or any sport you want. If you win a second time and go up to silver tier within a calendar year, you're not only getting another $200 value month, but also another free week of any other sport you want. So it could be NBA, say it's November, NBA and NFL. Now you've got NFL for a month, NBA for a week. You have a third win. You get Sims Max All Access, $550 value every single. And again, this could be you could win $100. And the value of these tools is going to be worth more than that win. And you still got it based on just rocking the avatar. And of course, you get that beautiful $20,000 win. You get the custom engraved Stokastic Hall of Fame ring. You join the Ring of Honor in the spinning display case. I mean, aren't they beautiful? Oh, look at them spin. Anyway, stokastic.com/HOF. Anything before we go, Greg?
No, that's it, guys. If you haven't done it, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Also, like Lofty said, if you are a subscriber to any of our packages, it comes with access to our Discord channel. Make sure to join Discord, say hi, and ask us questions.
Absolutely. Hey, appreciate you guys. Have a great rest of the day. We'll catch you back here tonight. MLB live before lock?
Yep. Baseball today. Only a few regular season slates left. I think we got like 5 of them now.
Sunday's usually the last day, right? So
yep.
Tomorrow's Showdown Strategy, the Pick'em show with Greg and Eitan. Stick around for
now.
that.
They're doing that Friday after.
Oh, they're doing it Friday now. They moved it. Yeah. Okay. All right, cool. So we got a full slate of shows on Friday. Anyway, you know where to find us. And anything from a betting standpoint, Odd Shopper's got you covered. Catch you guys later. Peace.